Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be another Canadian soldier reacts, or actually, it's going to be a little bit different today because it's going to be a Canadian sailor reacting. So we're going to look at what is the strength of the Royal Navy today, and obviously, I'm an infanteer, so I cannot talk intelligently on the subject. So I have a good buddy of mine, an old friend, Chief Art. How you doing, Chief?
Good. Yourself?
Not bad at all. Um, tell
You're
everybody.
seasick already, I can tell.
Oh my lord, dude! I do. I get seasick. Though, I used to get sick in the back of the Grizzlies. Did you ever ride in a Grizzly?
At a demo I rode once in a lab, which I'm assuming is much the same, at least from a passenger
Yeah,
perspective.
it is. Same. Yeah, 8 wheels instead
Yeah,
of
it was
six.
it was closed and dark and hot and
Yeah,
stuffy and uncomfortable.
I got sick in the back of one of those. Could you imagine what I'd be on a ship? Oh my god.
Well,
So, um, Chief, so I'm not just that's not just a moniker there. You were actually Canadian Forces Chief Petty Officer, correct?
that's correct. Yeah.
What was your last posting?
So I served 30 years in the Royal Canadian Navy. My very last postings were in typical late career stuff, headquarters stuff. I was involved in the purchasing of satellite communications equipment, which we can see on the ship that's paused there at the moment. And my last operational posting was to HMCS Athabascan, which was one of Canada's air defense destroyers. It's since been retired, and we probably shaved with it this morning.
And you were chief of the ship,
For that time, I was the combat chief on board.
combat chief. Okay,
Yeah,
I don't know the Navy
no,
positions, so
no, that's right. And I couldn't equate that to whatever you guys had. No doubt. At one time, I was on a leadership course with Canadian Forces, and it was one of those Army, Navy, Air Force courses. And we were having trouble with language like this.
right.
And an Army guy got up and drew an infantry company, and then I just got up and crossed out all the names and replaced them with the terms I was used to. But the
Yep.
structure was the same.
You would have
If
been
the thing
though.
broke, don't fix it.
You would have been the senior non-commissioned officer
Not at that time on that ship. I was the senior non-commissioned guy in the combat department.
in the combat department.
Each force of the ship. That's right. The force ships are divided up into different teams. Obviously, the combat department, engineering, the air department, those types of things, and each one of those has a chief petty
Okay.
officer uh, with it as well. So and then there's one
So
big chief over them.
you would have been. Were you? Yeah, you would have been either equivalent to a company sergeant major or a battalion sergeant major at that time.
Yeah, that
Um,
makes sense.
Chief warrant officer, first
Yeah,
and second class, first class. It's pretty much exactly the same as a chief warrant officer, chief petty officer is pretty much exactly the same thing.
yeah, absolutely.
So we're
Like I
gonna.
said, once we got talking to each other, we all realized, yeah, we got a lot in common.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. I have stories about that I can tell sometime too. But we're here to take a look at the strength of the Royal Navy. So let's get into it.
Type 23 frigate HMS Richmond sailed from Plymouth on Friday. She's the third Royal Navy vessel to be deployed to the Gulf region. HMS Lancaster and Diamond are already there.
Richmond's actually sailing to the region because both Diamond and HMS Lancaster are already there and eventually will need to be swapped out. So it's not an escalation in terms.
Okay,
Not
Rob,
an S.
just so that people watching understand what you're talking about with those three ships.
Yeah,
Manchester, Diamond, and
Lancaster.
the third one, sorry. Yeah, the Diamond
Lancaster.
leaps at me instantly, probably because of my background. Is an air defense ship.
Okay.
And super modern. Like I think the last might have been Diamond. The last ones were literally just put in the water within the last few years. So very very high tech. Sort of the American versions of things we've heard of Harley Burks and those things. Designed for area defense, hundreds of miles around a task force at sea. Diamond and her sisters. One is called HMS Dragon, has the coolest, like we saw on this ship we were just watching, has the hull number on the side. HMS Dragon has a dragon. So, super cool.
Um,
But anyway, they're all named their names all start with a D, air defense destroyers. The other two ships with her will be like the one we're watching here.
Okay.
Would be more general purpose frigates.
Okay.
Again, very capable ships, but more of, able to carry out the three major functions of warfare: anti-air, anti-surface, and anti-submarine. Diamond can do the other two, but not real well.
Okay.
So you can do anti-aircraft is per primary function.
So on one of the air defense vessels, what would be the longest range weapon system?
Longest range, now I don't know what Diamond's carrying, but I know for a fact she'll be carrying a weapon capable of this type of thing. The Canadian Navy and the United States Navy, because we got them from them, uses various versions of what's called a standard missile. And the standard missile it comes up straight up from its launcher. There's no spinny launcher like you've seen in many movies. It comes straight up. So the missile is then intelligent enough to veer off whatever way it needs to go towards the target. Those missiles will have ranges, in excess of 100 nautical miles.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's no doubt Diamond has missiles capable of that type of thing as well.
That's cool.
There's also, that's right, that's the area defense thing. So Diamond and her sisters, Arleigh Burke's HMCS Athabascan, when she was one of us, as long as you're within 100 miles of her, you're protected.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Warships like Manchester and will have a local capability. So they can push their anti-aircraft missiles out to 20 or 30 nautical miles. So you've got to be closer. So that's like if you're in a convoy or a task group steaming together.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Let's keep going.
Escalation, but the situation in the Red Sea could further deteriorate, which could mean more demands on the Royal Navy. So when it comes to warships, what does the Navy have at its disposal? Starting with the largest and most powerful warships ever built for the Royal Navy, the aircraft carriers, HMS Queen Elizabeth and HMS Prince of Wales.
Okay. I'm probably going to regret asking this, but does Canada have any aircraft carriers?
No, we don't. That's not as big a deal as people want to make it. The aircraft carrier, like Prince of Wales and Queen Elizabeth, and the strike carrier, the big nuclear carriers that the Americans have,
right,
are force projection weapons. You send
Gotcha.
them into an area with the idea that you can project force ashore or against an enemy's fleets at sea.
Okay.
Canada
doesn't do that.
Doesn't need to do that. That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So our ships will carry helicopters for general purpose use and anti-submarine use. And those, like the new helicopters, for example, that are on Canadian frigates, have an ASW capable, anti-submarine warfare capability by itself, almost about the same as one of the frigates does. But it has the advantage of being able to go hundreds of nautical miles away from the mothership and project that capability.
Well, that's cool. All right.
Yeah, it is.
Let's keep going.
Then there are two Albion-class vessels designed to deliver the punch of the Royal Marines to land by sea or air. Britain has...
Yeah, that's something that I've talked about this before, actually, and this is something that I can talk intelligently on. We don't have anything even resembling Marines in Canada. Although, really, in my estimation, the only, and I know there are going to be people out there that are going to get upset at me for saying this, but the only difference between a Marine infantry and a ground infantry, an Army infantry, is the taxi that they use to get there.
And
you go ahead.
From a Canadian perspective, we're kind of maybe halfway or a quarter way there. The Royal Canadian Navy has a dedicated naval boarding party now.
That's
there was
new.
a time when, that's right, it's within the last, I don't know, probably since, they were standing it up about 2015, 16, about the time I got out of the Navy.
Okay.
And it is taken from sailors who have to meet, obviously, certain physical criteria and stuff. But when a Canadian ship, is deployed into an operational zone, like we're watching this ship deploying to the Middle East, they will take, instead of having to provide a boarding party from their own ship's company, they will take this dedicated team with them, and that's all they do for the time that they are
Wow.
posted with this team. They're regular sailors, but that's all they do while they're posted to this unit is boarding party and those types of things. Interventions at the shoreline,
Gotcha.
that type of stuff. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so yeah, here's the $64,000 question though. How many people in uniform in the Canadian Navy approximately?
Total would be between 8 to 10,000.
Yeah. Do you do you know off the top of your head how many American Marines there are in uniform?
No, but it's probably more than 8 to 10,000.
300,000. And that's
Wow.
just Marines.
Yeah.
Dude, I when I was out in Washington, I used to go. I had a bunch of friends who were Marines actually, and Army, and I would go to Joint Base Lewis McChord out in Washington. That base alone, 85,000 people in uniform.
Yes. Yes.
We Canada, all three arms, all three branches, somewhere around 68,000 people in uniform.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah.
All
We
right.
used to go to Norfolk, which is the largest naval base, at least in the world.
Yeah.
And when we'd be going down to our parking spot at the end of the jetty, it passed like 5 nuclear carriers, 4 of the amphibs, and there's more combat power in one jetty than the Canadian Navy has in total.
Yep. Oh man, and that hurts. I swear to
It
God.
does.
All
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
6 Type 45 destroyers, the backbone of the Royal Navy.
These are the D ones I was talking about.
Yeah. So how many have we got? The destroyer class.
We at the moment we don't.
Oh
The 4
wow.
we had have been retired. There are, as part of the what they're calling the Canadian Surface Combatant, there are some on the way eventually.
Okay. Well, at least we're getting something back. Ugh. Man, I worry. I do.
Their job is
Yes.
anti-aircraft and
Oh.
anti-missile warfare. There are 11 Type 23 frigates, originally designed for anti-submarine warfare during the Cold War, but now upgraded for modern missions.
I'm just gonna go back there.
Sure.
So what have we got now? I know Canada has frigates. In fact, I think that's about
Yeah.
all we have.
And they would be a little, and I'm just literally looking at the forecastle, which is the pointy end, the forecastle of this ship. So we can see, like at the bottom of the screen, we can see, yeah, where your cursor is. That's where the anchor stuff is. You can see where it's made marks on the deck.
Yeah.
So that's all fine. And then of course the main gun, which will be primarily a close-in anti-air weapon, actually. Also used for close-in anti-piracy duty would be a classic.
Oh yeah.
Because any pirate you're going to see is not going to be able to face off with something like that. And then just after that, continuing up the screen a little bit, you see the round. Nope, too far back.
Okay.
Just underneath
Oh,
the
this
bridge windows.
underneath the
Down,
windows.
down. There we go.
Oh, right here.
Underneath the bridge windows. That looks to me like a vertical launch system where the missiles come straight up. Remember I was talking about
Yep.
the standard missile?
Yep. Yep.
That looks like a standard missile launch system. Canada's frigates, roughly the same capabilities without a VLS, which does enhance the because all your missiles then can go without the ship having to maneuver. All your missiles can go more or less at once in any direction you want to.
Oh.
Canada's frigates, the missile launchers are midships, like behind, up there where the funnel is and stuff.
Yep.
They're in there.
Yep.
And they're pointed one side of the ship or the other, which is a more traditional setup, but it does require the ship to maneuver if you shot off everything on one side.
Okay. Cool.
For anti-submarine warfare during the Cold War, but now upgraded for modern missions.
Do we do much anti-submarine?
That continues to be a major function of the Canadian Navy. Tremendous experience with it during World War II. And again, I come back to the helicopter we carry on board the frigates. We use it as an anti-submarine warfare weapon. It's huge. Most navies will not, and the Royal Navy is pretty much the same, will not fly helicopters the size that we fly off the size of the ship that we fly them off. It would, the size of helicopter we fly, they would put them on their aircraft carrier. We carry it on a frigate.
Oh wow.
Which is why, yeah, absolutely.
What are
Which is
the
why it has a big.
what are the helicopters? Are they Sea Kings?
No, well, the Sea King has been retired.
Oh,
I'm been replaced with the Cyclone.
the Cyclone. Okay. Man, I'm old. Everything I used everything I used is retired. I swear to God.
Yeah, well, I'm feeling your
Then
pain.
Yeah.
there are 35 patrol and mine countermeasures vessels. The fleet is split up like this. 6 Hunt-class vessels that scour the world's seabeds for mines and lost explosives. 3 Sandown-class ships that work around the British coastline clearing old ordnance. 2 Cutlass-class vessels which patrol naval and territorial waters.
Just because the Cutlass class sounds different. But the previous 2 classes of ships that you're talking about, yeah, the Sandowns and the other ones. Canada has a similar capability. Because of the size of our Navy, we've got 12 what are called minor coastal defense vessels. And they're modular. They primarily can do minesweeping, have deployed, in fact, with NATO forces doing minesweeping. But you can take the sea container off the stern of the ship that has the minesweeping gear in it and use those ships to support diving, which would be EOD, explosive ordnance disposal, those types of things. So in order to get our bang for our buck, we've made them a little more modular. Yes, they're not as good as a dedicated ship, but we do get a little more bang for our buck out of them. Those are the Kingston class.
Cool. With sea containers.
Roughly look around the same price. That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Ordnance. 2 Cutlass-class vessels which patrol naval.
Yeah, these things are those are just close in ships. Like
yeah.
6.
We've got, well, I think it's half a dozen. We call them Orca class. They're on the west coast. Look to be about the same size, and with the big, like for a ship that size, if you look at the bridge windows, there's a big bridge on a ship which is pretty small.
Yeah.
Orca is the same, but it's used for training.
Okay. And it looks like some sort of a
half a dozen Orcas together, and they can do, close maneuvers and all that stuff, and you don't have to worry about banging a frigate into each other. If they bang one of these things into each other, it's not as big a deal.
Yeah. And it looks like some sort of a pintle mounted, maybe a 50 cal back here.
Yeah, that's pretty typical. All of the ships will have that as part of what we call force protection.
Gotcha.
And territorial waters around Gibraltar. 8 river-class offshore patrol vessels designed to...
River-class offshore patrol vessels. Leave it to the military, right? I swear to God.
Yeah. No oxymoron in there at all between the river class and offshore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Canada is in and probably fits the same piece in the order of battle as the river class looks like it does for the UK. But Canada's in the middle of building 6 Arctic and offshore patrol ships. Again, lightly armed. One, I think it's a 30 millimeter bushwhacker on the forecastle. Can support one of those giant helicopters I was talking about. They're much bigger than what you're looking at because the ship can also deploy into the Arctic with meter thick ice and break its way out. So needed to be a bigger ship in order to do that.
So has Canada got into the azimuthing pod drive systems yet?
The Kingston class has them, and I'm not sure about the Harry DeWolf, the AOP class. I'm not sure. I know they're electric drive, but I'm not sure it's that drive.
I asked that because I've heard, and what do I know? But I've heard that those are better for ice breaking because they can turn them around and actually use the propellers to chop up the ice, the pods.
Yes, that's right. Probably wouldn't work on the Harry DeWolf class that way because the ship is too big.
Okay.
But yeah, I know it's the thing. The Harry DeWolf was originally part of the spec. It ended up coming out of the spec. Was supposed to be able to break a meter of ice also going backwards.
Nice.
Normally you break ice by driving up on the ice and then letting the wake ship break through.
Yeah. Traditionally, yeah.
Yeah.
But when you're getting more than a meter or so of ice, that becomes a problem.
Yes, yeah. So you better have something else on your hands.
Yeah.
Territorial waters and support law enforcement missions. And 16 Archer-class fast inshore patrol boats which operate across the UK and Europe.
Yeah, those almost look like repurposed civilian vessels. They look,
Yeah.
yeah,
As a guess, I would say for Canada, that's been replaced with fisheries patrol boats
gotcha,
and vessels owned by the RCMP.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Canada has a Coast Guard though too, right?
Yes, they do. It's a non-military force. Um,
Oh,
Aids to navigation, search and rescue, some law enforcement, but mostly again as transport for RCMP.
oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And beneath the waves, there's a silent fleet of high-tech submarines. 4 Vanguard-class vessels, the protectors of Britain's nuclear deterrent.
So do we have any submarines? I remember we
We
tried to
do.
buy some.
Yeah, we've got them still.
Okay.
They've had a very storied lifetime. They were originally built, the last conventional submarines built by the United Kingdom. They laid them up because it's too expensive to run both conventional and nuclear subs, so they laid up their conventional submarines. And then we purchased them. At was then the deal of the century because we were writing off some debt that the UK still owed from World War II.
Oh, I
So
didn't know
it kind
that.
of worked out. It kind of worked out for everybody, but the submarines, for any number of a million reasons, have had a lot of trouble.
I remember the headlines when I think it was the first one coming over, caught on fire on the way over.
Yes, unfortunately, a man did die
Ooh.
in that event. Yeah, and I worked for the commanding officer of that submarine one time, and the ship was reduced to communications with a satellite telephone. The ship had a complete blackout internally, and it was just all kinds of bad news.
Wow.
Yeah. Now they've taken steps to make sure that something like that, like anything else, something like that doesn't happen again.
Cool.
5 Astute-class submarines currently in service, the most advanced and most powerful ever operated by the Royal Navy, and 1 Trafalgar-class submarine, adapted
Wow.
from its original role of hunting enemy submarines and surface ships to now do covert surveillance and inshore reconnaissance. But there is a question mark.
Retirement.
Yeah. I'm
I
I'm
would say it's a Trafalgar class. Yeah.
I'm struck by wow, look at what is that in the background, do you think? Look at that.
It's a fair question. I don't know.
That's weird looking.
Yeah, the optical illusion of whatever it is puts your mind into weird places for sure.
Yeah.
I gotta say, oddly, I think it's just a building with a big ship behind it.
Oh, maybe. Could be. Yeah. Oh, it could be a dock and that could be a one of the buildings on the dock, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm struck by the fact, though, that Canada is so much bigger than England, yet their naval forces are so much stronger than ours.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Over the future of HMS
The Royal Navy has a long history and is very aware of that, even as they downsize. The force itself is very aware of its
Oh, they're downsizing, are they?
history and its requirement. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Albion and Bulwark. The Defence Secretary was questioned in the Commons about rumours he plans to retire the ships early.
Of course, anyone who is serious about defence budget has to make the decision about whether to put into maintenance ships which have already served twice their actual intended lives, 18 years times 2 and more, and would come out of that maintenance after brand new ships were actually already at sea. So there is obviously a decision for the Royal Navy to make on that. I should remind the House there are 8 Type 26 and 5 Type 31s under construction or under contract.
Criti-
Okay, good.
Wow.
This is a lesson that Canada didn't take on.
Yeah.
And I mean, the UK looks like they're a little behind the 8 ball, but Canada didn't take on the lesson at all. As the ships aged out, we go back to the Iroquois class, the air defense destroyers. There has been a program for a long time to replace them, but it never got off the ground, And still, although the intention is to build new to replace them, and the program exists, funded, the design is ready to go, it just hasn't happened. They even know what yard is going to build them. They're just not sure I'm not sure what the deal is, why it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
The minister is saying here, at least there is a tremendous amount of ships being built. So this downsizing the Royal Navy, of course, those older ships will have to go.
Yeah.
So likely what happens after new construction is you end up being the same size when it's over. but you're far more capable.
Yeah, and there's a cost to be paid for not replacing your obsolete ships too, right?
Both militarily, obviously,
Yep.
capabilities, um, and the longer you wait, of course, the more expensive it gets.
Yeah.
And any ship, as soon as you start building it, is obsolete.
Oh yeah.
So you try and because they're very high tech.
Right.
So you try and get them built in as reasonable time window as you can, so that when you go to sea, you're putting truly new capability on the front lines.
Right.
Critics are concerned about the impact on the Royal Marines if HMS Albion and Bulwark were to go, but the Defence Secretary said the Marines are an essential asset and that he's asked the First Sea Lord to provide a plan for how their work is taken forward. Claire Sadler, Forces News.
Okay, well, that is sobering. And we're looking at England. We're not even looking at the United States yet.
No.
That's I don't know, Chief. I sometimes feel like we're the young second cousin trying to play in the big boys pool.
We definitely come with less. However, I will say this. I've worked with both the Royal Navy, the UK Navy, and the United States Navy.
Yep.
Never once did I feel when we were dealing with them that we were the poor second cousins.
Well, that's
it helped
good.
a lot in the 90s when our frigates were new and we came with ships that were totally combat capable. And those ships have gone through a modernization here recently. Most other navies would have built new, but for Canada. But we modernized them, and they do have an excellent capability. And both navies have been, when we speak, we have an equal say in what's happening. And we're part of say, a task group of our allies and stuff like that. The United States Navy, for any number of reasons that I'm not sure of, I have a theory, but has a very good rapport with Canada, and I've seen it right from the big stuff. For example, what is known colloquially as Operation Desert Storm, of course. There was a large naval component of that. And all of the various task groups that were at sea, there was battleship groups and those days, battleship groups and carrier groups and all this kind of stuff. They were all commanded by American admirals, except for one group that was in charge of coordinating and protecting the logistics forces at sea, and that was commanded by a Canadian.
That's cool.
And the Americans chose that, and there was, every other Navy you can imagine from the West was there, and we got the call from the United States Navy to take charge of the logistic forces in the Gulf.
Well, that's cool. Were you in the Gulf War?
Yes. Yeah, I was a whole lot junior, but yeah, it was quite the experience for sure.
So I was there too. Actually, I was in Saudi Arabia with the first Forward Canadian Field Hospital, FSH.
Well, that had to be fun because we were told when we went ashore in Bahrain, you can pretty much got the run of the place, just don't go to Saudi because they got no sense of humor.
They had no sense of humor. We kind of stuck. We were when we were setting up, we were right beside the Brits, and we were just down the road from the Americans, and we kind of just stuck to ourselves. Right, you stay away from the locals. But anyway, we'll get into the training of the Canadian sailors versus other countries in another video. But I think that's going to do it for this one. Thanks everyone for watching. And if you like the video, please leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And if you want to see more from the Chief here, definitely leave a comment down below because we're going to have him back again. Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate it.
Take care.